Welcome back to my craft loft, everyone. This is Nicole Watt, the Pixel Maven at Pixel Maven's Retreat. And today, as a part of my craft loft ultimate tour, we are looking at cutting tools, so the Big Shot and punches. So there's really not a lot to tell here to start off with, so we'll just go through the shelves as normal. We've got my Big Shots, and yes, I do have two. It works out really great for classes. On the second shelf, we've got all of my framelits and edgelets and embossing folders. Then we have my Bigs dies, XLs, regular Bigs, etc., and cutting platforms. And then we've got punches, very nicely organized. What do you think of that blue? That might be the new color of all of my storage organizers. And then down at the bottom, we've got products and base materials that I'll be using for all sorts of different projects. And we'll get into what's in the mystery cubes a little later. So let's get started here. We'll take a little closer look at what I'm using to store all of my framelits and edgelets, and I'll move those over to the table so we can take a closer look. So the boxes that I'm using to store my edgelets and framelits and my embossing folders came from Target. They are really fresh. They've got these beautiful bright chartreuse green insides, and they fit 2 sets of the regular size framelit packages, which is really great. Let me just show you the inside here without anything in it. So these little corner pieces, they remind me a little bit of the slap bracelets because they're a little slappy. See how they slap into the corner there? And you can move these completely out of the way when you don't need them, or you can just pull out a couple, or all 4 of them like I do for my embossing folders. These are made by Rubbermaid. See, there's a little Rubbermaid there. And I use this one for my embossing folders. So all of the standard embossing folders fit perfectly in the middle here, and I can just rifle through them, get what I need. And the little Sizzlets dies, they fit right here in one of those boxes, and then our edge embossers fit right here on the side too. So I've got plenty of room. These are all nice and contained. They're not going to go too far. Those work out perfectly. For the edgelets and framelits, again, they fit in perfectly here. I like to push one of these out so that way they don't fall in too far. So that helps keep these standing up a little more upright. And then once you have enough in here, they stand up on their own. I just cut a piece of cardboard to put in the middle to help divide them. That way they don't get into each other's ways or rack around. I do keep them in a specific order. I like to have, well, not an order, but I do like to have all of my nesting dies together on one side. And then on the other side here I have like banners and the frames and some of the things that are not necessarily nesting or that don't nest perfectly together. So I just kind of keep them organized in a way that works for me. And then one other thing I wanted to show you about how I store my dies is I do keep them in the envelope, and I know a lot of people don't do that. But I like them in the envelope because it has some really good reference information here about the size of the dies, and I like to keep that handy. But I keep them on pieces of scrap cardboard or some heavy cardstock, and then I just cut pieces of magnet that's on an adhesive roll, and then just use those to adhere my dies to, so that way they stay in order really nicely. And then what happens when I go to sell these is I will go ahead and put these dies back onto a piece of Whisper White cardstock, kind of like they come, just with a little bit of snail adhesive, and then I reuse this magnet sheet for the next set of framelits that I get. On the next shelf down, I keep my cutting platforms, and I keep them separate from my dies, which are in a separate box here. So I don't have too many dies anymore. A lot of them are framelits these days, but I do just keep them all neatly stored here, and I'm sure I'll be getting more with the new catalog. And then I have my dies, or my cutting platforms, in here. And I'm going to show you a little trick about using the magnetic platform and the framelits and the cutting plates. So let's move over to the craft table. Since I have two big shots, I do have two multi-purpose platforms, and I keep them organized with their own set of cutting plates. Don't ask me why, it's just kind of the way that I have them organized right now. I had enough cutting plates that they each get their own set. I do keep these cutting plates separate from my magnetic platform plates because these are pretty warped, and even though I've used some heat techniques to flatten them out, I don't like to spend a lot of time doing that, so I'm okay with these being a little warped because I'm going to use these with dies that don't necessarily need flat plates like the magnetic platform does. So let's take a look at what I do for the magnetic platform. And as you know, it's really good to have a flat plate for the bottom so that your die sticks really well to it. So this is pretty flat. I mean, it could probably be flatter, but it'll work. So when I set up my sandwich, and just put one of these dies out here, I always do a plate on the bottom that has been cut into a whole lot. You know, or it could be a brand new plate or whatever, but I always put the cut into plate on the bottom, and then I put on my piece of paper and then the die. And on the top, the plate that I use, I mark magnetic platform top, and I only use this for my top plate. And the reason why is because if I put a plate like this one on the top, all of these little cuts are going to cut through the top of my piece of cardstock and leave all these little fine cuts, and it's going to look really crummy. So in order to avoid getting all those little cuts, which I don't care about if the cuts happen on the back side because I'm going to glue it down and no one's ever going to see it, but I really want the top to be nice and smooth, I use this same top that's only been cut on the top side so that it looks, it's not clear, and you can kind of see it there. It has indents in it, but it's just the indents from the top of the die, so from the pressure from going through the big shot. It has no cuts in it whatsoever. And so by always using this on the top, I avoid getting all those little cuts into the top of my cardstock. So that is my magnetic platform and cutting plate trick. On the next shelf I have all of my punches. I don't know if I have any great revelations here for you, except that Stampin' Storage, again, has some really great storage options for both your whale tail punches and your new style punches. So this box is designed specifically for the new style punches, and the spaces have different heights, so some of them will not take the large punches. That's just something to be aware of. But I was having some problems storing my whale tail punches. And if you don't know, these are called whale tail because it has a big tail on the end of it. So these are the old style punches, and I still have quite a few of those. So recently I purchased this just plain shelf from Stampin' Storage. I decided to do that instead of getting their specific whale tail punch storage for two reasons. One, because the punch storage was going to be too wide to fit into my limited space. So that was definitely like not going to happen. And I also selected this because I figure eventually I won't have the whale tail punches anymore, and I wanted something that was a little more versatile to fit in the other side of my shelf here. So this works out really well, and I know that some people had questions about how to mark their whale tail punches so they know what's on the shelf and they don't have to pull out each one to look at the little medallion and figure out what it is. Well, I put mine in this way instead of this way. So if I put it in this way, you can't really see what the punch is at all. But if I put it in this way, now I can see the image here, and I can just go ahead and pick out the punch that I want. The last two shelves on this section are all about base materials and shipping. So on this shelf I use a lot of magazine racks. Yeah, I have a lot of different styles, but I like these in particular because I can split up all sorts of different products. So this one is all about boxes and bags, and including the muslin bags, of course, if you recognize this from Dimitri's Adventures here in the craft loft. That stays there so he can find it when he wants to play. And then I've got some other products in here, kits and other materials that I've gotten from conventions, and then some other old retired products in here that I hope to use someday for a project. Anyway, so I just kind of keep this all in here on this side, and then on this side I have all sorts of random pieces of cardboard that always come in handy. So I will use these pieces to make those magnet backs for my framelits, or to bulk up something before I ship it. I have in here even my foam backing for the cling foam. It's all just kind of kept nice and organized in here. And then in this 12 by 12 storage container, which you won't find here in the US, I got this when I lived overseas, I keep in here the backs to our 12 by 12 paper and some other larger pieces of cardboard. It all just kind of works out really well. So I know if I need cardboard, I come over here and look for it. I know if I need kits or I'm looking for some inspiration or I need a bag or a box, I come over here and find it. So then in the bottom here, of course, I've got some more fabric cubes, and in these cubes I have extra DVD cases, both the wood mount and clear mount ones. These also work out really well for gift giving or for putting together small kits. I've got some bags and other gift giving materials here. I've got, and this is all of my envelopes are in here. The majority of these are Stampin' Up, some are not. Eventually I get through all of those. And then the last is the clear see-through bags for cards. And then I also have a whole pile of boxes for putting together collections of cards for gifts. So that is the next set of shelves in my craft loft, and tomorrow we're going to move on to ribbons and embellishments and the business center and something that I'm sure a lot of you have been waiting for, the photo booth, which really has turned out awesome and takes spectacular pictures. So until then, happy crafting.